Hello and welcome back to Infamous Indie. I'm your host, That Dead Girl, and if this is your first time joining me here, basically what I do is I sit down with you all and I share with you a true crime story from my home state of Indiana. And if you've been keeping tabs on all things Infamous Indie, then obviously you know that this week we will be getting into part 2 of the disappearance of Lauren Spierer. So, in part one, we essentially established the timeline of events that happened leading up to Lauren's disappearance. We know that Lauren was supposedly last seen at the intersection of 11th and College, walking towards her apartment. She had left Jay Rosenbaum's townhome around 4:30 in the morning, and her apartment was just 2.5 blocks away. She was last seen wearing a white tank top, black leggings, a white blouse, and notably, she was missing her shoes. So, now in part two of the story, I really just want to touch on what's happened since Lauren was initially reported missing. And that definitely includes all of the crazy theories that have come up in this case since Lauren disappeared. Now, as I mentioned in part one of this story, Jesse Wolf, who was Lauren Spierer's boyfriend at the time, was in fact the person that initially reported her missing to the Bloomington Police Department. Lauren's parents, Robert and Charlene, were just sitting down to dinner when they received the news. They immediately left their home in Scarsdale, New York, and flew to Bloomington, Indiana, to try and find some answers as to what happened to their daughter. Now, when the story of Lauren's disappearance first broke, it actually garnered a lot of media attention. Celebrities like Kim Kardashian and even Ryan Seacrest were tweeting about Lauren, sharing information on this case, basically trying to get people involved in the search for Lauren. In spite of the national media coverage, though, sadly, Lauren has still not been found. So Lauren is reported missing. Her parents fly in, and shortly after the initial missing persons report, a large search effort was conducted. The event was titled Find Lauren Day. It was made up of more than 500 people, including volunteers, the Bloomington Police Department, as well as the Indiana University Campus Police. The one-day search took place on a Saturday in June. Volunteers searched the entire Indiana University campus, as well as the neighborhood where Lauren was last seen, along with nearby dumpsters, forests, and small bodies of water. But sadly, despite their efforts, the search yielded absolutely no results. And in the years since Lauren's initial disappearance, several search efforts have been made. This included a 9-day search of Sycamore Ridge landfill located in Pimento, Indiana, which is just south of Terre Haute, Indiana. So investigators searched this area in particular because this is where trash from Bloomington, when hauled away, this is basically where it ended up. So basically, they're just searching through trash through this landfill to try and find any small piece of evidence or clue that could give them any type of lead in regards to Lauren's disappearance. And yet again, Robert and Charlene would be let down because this search yielded no evidence, no results. In June of 2011, investigators also did a search of Lake Monroe after receiving a very specific tip. And although they never did say what that tip was, they found nothing after, they searched this area. To me, the most interesting aspect of Lauren's case is the fact that there have been so many different leads, so many different theories as to what actually happened to her, within the last 11 years. So I'm actually going to dive into a few of these theories. Some of these theories have been confirmed to be false, while others are actually still being investigated. So, initially, a lot of people actually believed that Lauren had been drugged while she was inside of Kilroy Sports Bar. I mean, honestly, that's not too far fetched. Lauren's family, however, have actively voiced their suspicions about the 4 young men that Lauren had spent her evening with before she disappeared. While Lauren's family hasn't necessarily outright accused these men of any wrongdoing, they believe that they know much more than they're saying, and I gotta say, I completely agree with this. And I did want to mention that Jesse Wolf, Jay Rosenbaum, and Corey Rossman all hired attorneys very early on in this investigation. And other than the initial statements they gave to police after Lauren disappeared, they have not been very cooperative in the investigation. These men have refused polygraph tests, they've, declined to be interviewed, and Jesse Wolf even went as far as to leave Indiana entirely. Now, it's said that they actually did end up taking these privately administered polygraphs, but the fact that they refused the polygraphs that would have been administered by the FBI just seems kind of suspicious to me. They also claim that they had to obtain lawyers very early on simply because they did not trust the Bloomington police. Now, I can't speak for everybody, but I know personally if it was me and I had been involved in a situation like this and I had nothing to hide, I would just be coming forward with everything. Like, I wouldn't hold anything back. I believe that I would want to do everything in my power to help find, my loved one or a person that I cared about. But anyway, Lauren's friends or acquaintances, whatever you want to call them, as well as her boyfriend Jesse Wolf, all attested to the fact that Lauren had been using drugs and alcohol the night she disappeared. Now, a lot of people said that they weren't aware that Lauren had any type of drug problem or anything like that. But if you dig a little deeper, it does kind of seem that this may have been something that Lauren was struggling with. Jesse Wolf's mother actually claimed that Lauren Spierer had had a drug problem for quite some time. She claimed that Lauren was actually kicked out of the summer camp we spoke about in part one. She claims that Lauren was kicked out of this camp for using drugs. She even went as far as to say that maybe Lauren Spierer would still be around today had she had not been abusing drugs. On September 2nd, 2010, Lauren Spierer was actually arrested for public intoxication and illegal consumption. Jay Rosenbaum and Corey Rossman both told investigators that Lauren had been drinking very heavily that night, and she had also been doing lines of cocaine and snorting crushed up Klonopin. After Lauren's disappearance, police actually did go on to find a small amount of cocaine in Lauren's bedroom. Now, the combination of alcohol, cocaine, and Klonopin altogether is very deadly. It's also important to bring up the fact that Lauren suffered from a very rare heart condition called long QT syndrome. And basically, that's just a heart rhythm disorder that can potentially cause erratic and chaotic heartbeats. So, in my mind, it's very plausible that Lauren could have accidentally overdosed, and, these men that she had been hanging out with all night tried to cover it up in fear of going to jail or being punished. In fact, an inmate who had served time with a young man named Corey Hammersley came forward to police telling a story that claimed just that. Corey Hammersley is currently serving a 28-year sentence in Indiana. Basically, he took to the streets naked, brandishing a machine gun while on an LSD trip. He fired several rounds into people's homes and cars, and he even threatened police with the weapon. So, this Corey Hammersley dude attended Indiana University, and he was known for having lots of drugs and being kind of a hit at all the parties, and he actually ran in the same circle as Lauren Spierer. Now, this man who came forward with this story, he chose to remain anonymous, but he did recall an incident where he and Corey Hammersley were playing cards together in lockup. So apparently there was a TV on in the background while they're playing cards, and Lauren Spierer's picture happened to pop up on the screen. So when Corey sees Lauren's picture on the screen, he actually says to the other inmate, "Oh wow, I know the guys who did that." He went on to tell a story to this inmate that they had all been hanging out together doing ecstasy and a lot of other drugs when Lauren actually overdosed and everybody at this party began to panic and freak out. Corey Hammersley then claims that they took Lauren's body and that they had actually dumped it into the Ohio River. So when investigators questioned this Corey Hammersley dude about these statements that he supposedly made, he denied having any involvement. In fact, he said that he had never met Lauren in his life and he didn't know any. Then I guess investigators went on to ask him, well, if you did happen to hear something, would you be willing to come forward? And he basically tells them, absolutely not. I'm just here to serve my time and get out. And in my mind, I'm not a detective, obviously, but to me, this is the most plausible explanation of what could have happened to Lauren Spierer the night that she disappeared. I definitely think that all of these young men involved know a lot more than what they are saying. They were the last people to see her alive. I mean, we have proof and evidence of this. So, if you're not guilty, then why aren't you doing more to help? Just, simply come forward and cooperate. It just really doesn't make sense to me. So, the next theory is pretty straight, simple, and forward. Lauren was kidnapped while walking back home to her apartment. This actually isn't too far fetched, given the fact that Bloomington and Indiana University are kind of gaining this reputation for murders and missing persons, namely women. Jill Bierman and Hannah Wilson, those are just a few cases um, out of Bloomington, Indiana, that are actually just eerily similar to what happened to Lauren. But obviously, now we know both of those cases have been solved and weren't directly related to Lauren. So we know that Lauren was heavily intoxicated. Lauren was also a very petite young woman. I mean, she was about 4'11 and only weighed about 95 pounds. This girl is intoxicated and walking home all alone at 4:30 in the morning. And even though she was only 2.5 blocks away from her apartment, anything could have happened to her. And it's sad to think about that, but someone could have easily snatched her up. And with her being in such an intoxicated state, there probably wouldn't be much that she could do to fend them off or stop it from happening. The next theory I wanted to touch on in this disappearance is something that's been called the Mars Hill connection. A woman named Jennifer Chandler actually came forward, and this woman is a self proclaimed meth addict and has been since she was 16 years old, apparently. She claims that the answer to Lauren Spiere's disappearance can be found at a small abandoned house located on South Moreland Road in Mars Hill, which is kind of an area in Indianapolis. This woman claimed that Lauren Spierer would hang out at this house quite frequently and that she would also purchase drugs while she was at the home. Apparently, something went down and drugs were definitely involved, but the woman claimed that Lauren was actually beaten to death and buried, somewhere on this property. Now, investigators would go on to find many discrepancies in this woman's story, and basically, this theory has been largely discredited. The next theory, in regards to Lauren's disappearance, is known as the man in the white truck. The only surveillance video that has actually been released since Lauren disappeared is this video of a white pickup truck circling the block 2 times during the time period that Lauren would have disappeared. And what's interesting about this surveillance footage is that when you see this truck pass by, there appears to be a person possibly huddled up in the bed of this truck. Now, the footage is very grainy, so it's kind of hard to make it out, but it does kind of look like a blonde girl wearing a white shirt and black pants. Investigators would eventually link this truck to a man named Justin Wagers. And this Justin Wagers guy, he does have a very extensive criminal history. Apparently, Justin Wagers had pled guilty to 10 counts of public indecency, 4 battery charges, 2 charges of vicarious sexual gratification, and invasion of privacy. Now, some of those I don't even know what they are, to be honest with you, but that all sounds like some creepy ass perverted shit. In 2016, police actually conducted 2 separate raids on properties that were linked to this Justin Wagers fellow. The first was a residence located in Martinsville on Old Morgantown Road, and the second was a property located in Trafalgar. Federal investigators dug for evidence at both locations and also used cadaver dogs. Investigators also seized the white truck and it was tested for DNA as well. And while the cadaver dogs did hit at a couple of locations on one of the properties, nothing of interest was found. And at this point in the investigation, Justin Wagers sadly has not been named as a possible suspect. A tip came in from a woman claiming to have information on Lauren's disappearance. She claimed that she had overheard one of her family members bragging to people about his involvement in what had happened to Lauren. He was basically saying that he was the one who did it and he was taking responsibility for this. This man's name was Bodine, and apparently he was a former enforcer for the Sons of Silence MC. And as the story goes, Lauren supposedly owed this Bodine character a large amount of money for drugs. Allegedly, Bodine shot Lauren Spierer and then buried her body on his property, claiming that she would make good fertilizer. Bodine maintains his innocence and claims to have no connection to Lauren Spierer whatsoever. 2020 actually attempted to interview Bodine in regards to Lauren's case. And while he initially agreed to this interview, when 2020 showed up, he threatened them with a gun, saying that he was going to shoot them if they did not leave his property immediately. This theory has never been confirmed, nor has it ever been denied, but in my mind, it's kind of hard to even link these two people together. So I don't believe that Lauren and this motorcycle guy were ever connected in any way. So in 2021, Ty the Crazy Guy released a kind of conspiracy theory video about Rubit Virtual Casinos. And I'm not even sure if I'm saying that name right, but whatever. So Rubit is essentially a virtual casino. You can bet money on card games from your computer, and there are dealers, most of whom are women, and these women play against you live. So apparently there's this theory that many of these dealers or women who are working for this virtual casino are actually women who have been missing or are being sex trafficked. So in one of these videos, this Ty the Crazy Guy claims that one of the dealers actually strongly resembles Lauren Spierer. I mean, I've seen the video. The woman does have blonde hair, blue eyes, but she's also wearing a mask. So it's really hard to tell. Lauren's family did actually make a statement in regards to this, basically saying that they were aware of the video and that they were definitely looking into it. And that's pretty much the most recent update in the case as of today. There were a few other men who were sex offenders, had been charged with violent crimes, who were also like initially thought to be suspects, but those men have been cooperative with investigators. Some even submitted DNA and did polygraph tests, and they were eventually ruled out. It has been 11 years since Lauren disappeared. It seems to me that, police are no closer today to finding her than they were 11 years ago. And actually, Robert and Charlene Spierer claim that Bloomington police, were basically not communicating with them at all on Lauren's investigation. And they have actually since hired their own private investigator. It does sort of feel like Bloomington police have no clue, you know, what's going on in this case. It just seems like they've wasted most of their time chasing all of these random leads to no avail. And one of the things that really strikes me as odd, or I guess kind of bothers me about this case, is the fact that the police refuse to release all of the surveillance footage that's involved in this case. This has been a tactic that's been proven very useful in other cases. It's actually solved many cases. So one kind of can't help but think, why are you not releasing this footage? What is it that you're trying to hide? But in my personal opinion, the answers that they seek might be closer to them than they realize. They needn't look any further than Jesse Wolf, Jay Rosenbaum, and Corey Rossman. They were with Lauren. They allowed her to continue on, in a highly intoxicated state with no regard for her personal well being and absolutely no concern for her safety. And this isn't just some random girl at a party. This is their close friend, their girlfriend. How hard could it really have been to simply just walk Lauren home that night? Especially since they all knew the state that she was in and that she could not walk. And they even knew that Lauren did not have her phone. She had no shoes. She didn't even have keys to get into her apartment at this point. And, Lauren was an adult. Don't get me wrong. Maybe she didn't make the best choices on this night. But that doesn't mean that she deserved to disappear or, even worse, deserved to die. These men are the only ones who know the real truth. And until they grow some balls and come forward, I don't believe that anyone will ever truly know what happened to Lauren Spierer. With that being said, I truly hope that the Spierer family can find the answers that they so desperately need now that they've hired, their own private investigator. Maybe he can see this for something that, the Bloomington police cannot. And that, my friends, is the story of the disappearance of Lauren Spierer. Since 2011, the tip line has received thousands and thousands and thousands of tips, and all of these are being actively investigated. The police are refusing to call Lauren's case a cold case. So I'm going to share that info in this video in hopes that, maybe someone out there will see it and maybe they know something and maybe they'll come forward. Just want to thank you guys for tuning in this week. Give you a little update on some of the things that I'm actually working on. My next story will be an episode of Indie Haunts just because a lot of you have been asking for one. And I will be talking about the Demon House of Gary, Indiana. I'm also working on a story about a serial killer named Larry Eiler. And I'm working on something very special for Valentine's Day. So definitely be on the lookout for all of those in the coming weeks. I've actually reached like 261 subscribers on my channel, and I'm so happy and so excited about that. So thank you to all of you who watch every week and those of you who have subscribed. But if you haven't, please don't forget to, like this video and subscribe to my channel for more spooky content. And as always, if you like or love what I do here at Infamous Indie, please do feel free to share my content with anyone who loves true crime as much as I do. And with that being said, don't forget to stay spooky, keep it creepy, and watch your back because it's a crazy fucking world out there.